The Secret of Creating Your Reality. A Guide to Live a Flourishing Life. Grace Scott. Introduction. In our day-to-day lives, we all face many new situations as well as many familiar ones. We become so caught up in dealing with our problems that we often forget to stop and think about why something happened and what its implications are. Also, we rarely take out time to reflect upon our reactions to these situations. What happens is that, over time, these things start piling up and begin to affect our thinking and actions in significant ways. It is only when something happens on a very large scale, or when something that personally affects us in a major way occurs, that we pause for a moment and begin to wonder what just happened. This is the point at which we start to break the event down into smaller portions in an attempt to understand it. We look at these many fragments one by one and then try to piece them together to create a holistic picture. Though this may seem like a good strategy, and it often is, it does not always work. This is because the entirety of the situation cannot always be understood by looking at it alone. The person must take into account many other things that have led up to that situation. They must also see how they have contributed to it, and this must be done in an unbiased manner. This is where the real issue stems from. People are not fully aware of who they are and what they want. They see themselves as people see them, and they try to be seen how people want to see them. This is unfortunate because, amidst all of this, their own individuality begins to fade away. Slowly but surely, lose sight of their inner self. Once this process has begun, there is no stopping it until and unless the person makes a decision to do so. This requires a conscious effort and dictates that the person should start removing the influences of their surroundings. Indeed, this is not an easy task, which is why the majority of people fail to live consciously. This has resulted in a homogenization of beliefs, hopes and goals. Everyone has started to think in rather similar ways, despite the fact that they are unique to their core. Keeping the above in mind, it is easier to understand how specific assumptions and generalizations concerning people's behavior came to exist. This forms the dominant opinion and is, therefore, more influential than the inner voice of a person, which may be telling them to do something that does not fit very well into this perspective. We are now in a better position to see why it is so difficult to go against the flow. So far, we have looked at how this conflict between a person's innate characteristics and the wider world viewpoint comes into being. Still, we have only just touched the tip of the iceberg. There is much more to this than the summarized version presented above. We will now steer the discussion into a more specific direction and go deeper into these issues, which will go on to build the base for better comprehension of the rest of the material in this book. Let's begin by talking about society. There are two main questions that need to be addressed here: what is meant by society, and how is society significant when talking about creating realities? Throughout the course of this book, you will find that this is a recurring theme, which tends to be repeated in one way or another because there are far too many related aspects to be discussed within just a page or two. When we define a society as a group of people who fall under the same set of characteristics, generally speaking, they tend to have the same beliefs and expect people to behave according to the same principles. This leads us to the question of morality: what is right and what is wrong? Similarly, what can be classified as good and what can be classified as bad? The answer to these questions are all extremely subjective in nature and vary from society to society. Still, what is important to note here is that within the same society, they can be taken to be relatively the same. Each member of that society can be said to subscribe to the same thought process and ideology. What is even more interesting to note here is that the society itself is nothing without the people that form it. Without them, it would simply not be able to exist. Thus, these people too must have their own unique approaches, visions and outlooks towards life, just like any other human being. How is it possible that they would all agree on different decisions, such as what one must do and what one must think? This is where the concept of norms comes in. Norms are those rules and regulations that are an unwritten code of conduct, which people must adhere to if they want to fit into the society that they are a part of. These are all those values that parents, friends and relatives try to inculcate in a person ever since he or she becomes of a reasonable age. Even strangers can be a big part of the process of promoting and instilling these norms. You may be asking how that is even possible, but the answer is simple. When anyone does perform an act, others who get to know of this may laud them. Similarly, if the same person were to do something that was against the norm, then he or she would be heavily criticized for it. It is exactly this pattern of approval and disapproval that establishes social and cultural norms in the first place. When instances such as these take place repeatedly, the concept of what to do and what not to do starts setting into the subconscious mind of a person. Even before they know it, it has been internalized completely. Hence, they will begin conforming according to these norms. What is interesting is that norms will always continue to evolve with time, and the idea of what is allowed and what is forbidden will change every now and then, owing to social, cultural and economic reasons. Still, the one thing that will remain constant is that people will still be expected to follow them. Whether or not we agree with the logic behind these norms is irrelevant, and, in most cases, people will not go into too much detail to question their existence or enforcement. This is because the notion has been so deeply ingrained in us that we rarely think about whether it is actually beneficial or harmful to succumb to this philosophy. Even more rarely do we ever stop to consider the correctness of these unsaid laws and if they should even exist. What makes things even more complicated is the fact that norms do not only mean small acts and actions that people carry out routinely, they also include major life decisions. Some universal trends that fall under this category include all the milestones that alter a person's life forever, such going to school, getting a college degree, and getting married. This is not to say in any way that these are not essential elements needed to create a good life, but then again it does not also mean that checking all these boxes will lead to a complete life. This is the vital distinction that this book seeks to highlight. The difference between a good life and a complete life is a fine line that is easily ignorable if we are being objective. However, from a subjective standpoint, it lies in the subtleties of practical life. There will always be people that tell you how you should live and what your next step should be. They may sound very convincing and could light up help inside of you by pointing you in a particular direction. Regardless, what they can never do is guarantee the fact that you will find happiness at the end of it all. People are always telling each other to be grateful for everything they have, from the biggest blessings to the tiniest ones. This is very true, and it is, indeed, valuable advice. However, it is not all that easy to apply. This is because we all live in communion with one another and, therefore, see our lives relative to others. This is why we are constantly ranking ourselves as compared to others. It is basic human nature to think that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, and this is what makes people so competitive sometimes. It also brings out another side of people, which is self-pity. This leads them to play blame games that help them to come up with hundreds of reasons as to why they have not been able to reach the goals and dreams that they have always wanted to. This is one of those typical things that people do, which prevent them from creating their own realities. Now that we have seen how people, processes and environments go hand in hand and how they influence one another, we are in a better position to understand why people are unable to live up to their own potential. The main reason is that people do not know themselves as well as they think they do. Most of us have a fair idea of what we want to do and where we see ourselves in the next 6 months, if not the next 5 years. However, this is, more often than not, just an amalgam of what we want and what society expects of us. This includes the influences of your parents' hopes and aspirations for you, as well as what you want to do to keep up with the same level of success as your peers. Thus, What we have at the end is a name that is representative of many different needs and wants. While they may feel like they have accomplished something by achieving these goals, they may not necessarily feel content or satisfied. This is something that can only be understood when people go through it personally. This marks the turning point in their lives when they start thinking about what it is that would truly make them happy. People are unable to mold their ideal realities because they do not focus on what they want for themselves. Instead, most of us become tangled up in what we want, what we need, and what we should do. In all honesty, this cannot be completely avoided, and neither should it be. A balanced life requires a person to be able to juggle all of these approaches. The key here is to not forget about yourself as a person while trying to do so. This requires people to be focused on their priorities, and their first priority should be to discover themselves and make sure that they remain true to their unique selves. That means they must not become one of the herd. The only way this can be avoided is if they regularly evaluate their thoughts to remind themselves of what is of utmost importance to them. Throughout our lives, we will all be faced with many situations that place us at a crossroad. It is important to reiterate here that one should remember the difference between a good life and a complete life. In addition to that, they should also be aware of what is good and what is bad at all times. This is not quite the same as being right or wrong. One can be right to do something as it provides them with a gain, but it may not necessarily be good if it means that the benefit is coming at a cost to someone else. Another reason that stands in the way of most people and their realities is their internal belief system. They may feel that they do not have the skills or ability to do what they want to. They have a natural tendency to be afraid of the unknown as well as a fear of failure, which holds them back and prevents them from testing the waters. They never experiment and allow themselves the freedom to try something new and exciting. Sometimes the environment within which a child has grown up can affect their confidence. If they have been surrounded by negativity during their formative years, then they are more likely to grow up into adults with low self-esteem. Whoever came up with the phrase mind over matter really did make a strong point. An individual really is just as strong as their thoughts and beliefs. There are more than what meets the eye when it comes to determining what your reality should be and how you should create it. The mechanisms involved are complex and intricate all at the same time, which can make the entire process quite confusing and sometimes even frustrating. In order to be successful at building your own reality, one needs to be in tune with the society and themselves, as well as constantly being at war with the two. This is one of life's biggest paradoxes, but it's actually quite easy to figure out if we put just a little bit of thought into it. There are a few concepts that one needs to develop a thorough understanding of before they can get started. They must know what it means to create your reality, and they must know how this is done. They should also be able to distinguish between what the herd mentality requires them to do and what their intrinsic capabilities and interests tell them to do. They must also strive to be patient, as this is no easy task. It involves innumerable large-scale and small-scale decisions, which can be very difficult to make, especially if they wish to stick to their principles regarding what is right and wrong or good and bad. That being said, it is definitely not impossible and is very well within the reach of absolutely everyone, just as long as they keep their eyes on the prize and make a solid effort to work towards it. Chapter 1, Herd Mentality. Herd mentality, also known as mob mentality, is the phenomenon in which people are influenced by their peers to adopt certain actions, behaviors or trends. We may like to believe in our strong conviction to stand our ground and avoid being wavered by anyone else's views, but one would be surprised to see how easily that fide peels away in the face of certain situations. People tend to follow the behavioral patterns of others, sometimes without even realizing it. In extreme cases, when people get together, they end up doing bizarre and nonsensical things that they would usually never even dream of doing. These things could turn violent or dangerous, and may be unlike the general disposition of the people in question. This phenomenon is referred to as herd mentality, After indulging in herd mentality, one is often left pondering, what on earth was I thinking? Herd mentality is usually seen as a negative phenomenon, as can be corroborated by its alternative phrase, mob mentality. A mob is typically associated with mob lynches, mob riots, mob rallies and mob violence, which is what the mob mentality usually results in. There have been many incidents in our ancient and recent history where mob mentality led to widespread pillages and plunders in various communities. Herd mentality has the potential to infuse damage of epic proportions to people, as well as society as a whole. Examples of mass suicides, stadium trampling, Ku Klux Klan lynching, and widespread rioting are all testament to mob mentality. The behavior exhibited via herd mentality is often studied by social psychologists. They also refer to it as crowd hysteria. The studies pertaining to herd mentality are used to analyze the scenarios that are created from issues during public excavations to large gatherings that turn awry and brutal. History of herd mentality. The origins of herd mentality can be traced all the way back to when people tended to create tribes, migrated in groups, and formed communities. In the 19th century, the idea was introduced by two French social psychologists, who were called Gabriel Tarde and Gustave Le Bon. They were both hailed as the pioneers of crowd psychology. However, it was not until quite later when their ideas gained credence. Sigmund Freud also took up this concept and described it as a process whereby people behaved differently than they would individually. It has also been described as the alignment of multiple ways into one, where everyone then thinks in a similar fashion because of the marring of individual differences and how insignificant they suddenly seem in a large group. Wilfred Trotter, 1872 to 1939, a famous British neurosurgeon, wrote about herd mentality in his famous work titled, Herd Instincts in Peace and War. Similarly, Thorstein Veblen, 1857 to 1929, an American economist and sociologist, wrote a renowned book called The Theory of the Leisure Class. In this book, he discussed in great detail how the working class members of society attempt to emulate the elite class via their purchasing behavior. In recent times, many fields of science, such as finance, economics and marketing, make use of this phenomenon in order to anticipate the mechanics of rational and illogical behavior of consumers. Prominent examples in history of herd mentality. History is peppered with some accurate examples of herd mentality and its devastating effects onto property, people, and the community as a whole. Some notable examples are Salem witch trials. This is one of the oldest examples in the whole history of herd mentality. The Salem witch trials are part of a notorious incident that dates back to 1692. This incident accurately depicts what a deadly collusion of religious extremism mobs can do to a society. The events of this time were so deadly and brutal that even after 320 years have gone by, people still refer back to the terrible circumstances and tortured victims. The phrase witch hunt was coined as a reference to the Salem witch trials, and are used to imply a futile or unjust search. The incident itself involved some women in the town of Salem, who suddenly began acting bizarrely and had uncontrollable fits and contortions. They blamed witches for this inexplicable behavior and raised accusatory fingers at some specific women in Salem who were not even remotely connected to the disturbed women. When doctors confirmed the diagnosis as being possessed by witches, the religious and superstitious town went into overdrive with passionate rage. Salem officials began arresting suspected witches by using flimsy pieces of evidence. Scores of these accused women were murdered brutally, either by being burned at the stake or crushed under stones. Stock market movements. This may be a more subtle example of herd mentality, but is still one that drives finance analysts and stock market experts to study the predicted movements of the stocks. What drives herd mentality, and results in people acting in a certain common way, is fear and uncertainty. In simple terms, when people believe the economy is performing well, the stock prices rise, and when they fear the economy will take a downturn, via rumors, word of mouth and the media, that is when they stop purchasing stocks. This results in the economy experiencing a downturn. As expected, this phenomenon is referred to as a self-fulfilling prophecy. To make matters more complex, people rely upon experts and professionals to guide them or to give them some cues as to what direction the stock market would take. By the time the herd jumps on the bandwagon, the advantage is lost and there are no more gains to be had. Hence, the herd is in a self-perpetuated bubble of vulnerability as it fruitlessly attempts to reach the pinnacle while letting other people cloud their perceptions. Stampedes at sporting events. Large sporting events are a breeding ground for herd mentality. Typically, people become wrought with emotion, passion and determination, which are provoked when rooting for a favorite side at any major sporting event. This can trigger a herd mentality show of action. Within large crowds, spectators become more riled up and vivacious as they cheer their teams in a boorish manner, which they normally would not do if alone. This is the result of taking in the collective moods of the majority of the audience and replicating that same behavior in order to blend in. For example, in the Accra Sports Stadium, Accra, there was a huge commotion as a crowd started acting violently after the league match ended between Accra Hearts and Asante Kotoko. The chaotic stampeding got so out of hand that the police had to intervene and use tear gas to disperse the rowdy crowd. The resulting damage and commotion led to a tragic death of 127 people who were mercilessly crushed. This was the worst recorded stampede incident in the whole of Africa. Why do people indulge in herd mentality? In order to set yourself apart from the very imminent phenomenon of herd mentality, one needs to answer the following questions. Do you regard yourself to be separate from a crowd? Do you feel proud and confident when you stand apart from a crowd? Is your decision-making process influenced only by your own views, or do you also factor other people's views into your decision? Do you care a lot about what is in fashion or not? Do you consider yourself so morally strong that your moral compass can never waver in a large group of people? Do you strongly believe that you would never indulge in herd mentality? Research suggests that our brains are wired in such a way that we would tend to conform to what the crowd or large group is doing or saying when faced with such a situation. However, one can wheedle their way out of such a situation by simply saying no, which is the first step to maintaining one's own stance. We all have taken part in herd mentality in small ways or the other. For instance, have you ever been to a stadium where there is highly charged football match going on, and you observe a handful of fans cheering wildly? Gradually, more people will join them in their cheering. Soon enough, the majority is doing the same, and you stand there uncomfortably, not knowing exactly how to react. Eventually, you also begin to cheer and clap like the rest of them, so that you do not look or feel like the odd one out. This also makes you feel like you're blending in with the crowd. This sort of behavior truly reflects the age-old motto, if you can't beat them, join them. Fashion trends and statements are another very common example of how easily people are sucked into herd mentality. It is a common sight to see teenagers wear baggy pants with their jeans hanging dangerously low, some with their buttocks half showing. There was a time when this so-called fashion trend was considered stylish and anyone not following it was considered ancient and outdated. For this reason, everyone followed it as much as they could at the risk of becoming a social outcast or committing a fashion faux pas. Fashion trends change at lightning speed and keeping up with all of them is being part of the phenomenon of herd mentality. A recent study conducted at the Basel University, Switzerland, by Vasil Klosharf made use of an MRI machine to observe and scan the brain patterns of an individual as they were asked to rate the attractiveness of general faces. Once the results were in, the participants were informed that their answers did not corroborate with the average rating of each face, and they were scanned again. This time, an error signal was triggered in the brain, the majority of the people altered their opinions, illustrating that brains may be wired to conform to the herd. Another study to examine herd mentality was conducted by Chris Frid and Daniel Campbell Makeljohn in Aarhus University, Denmark. The reward centers of the brain would be activated if a particular pop song was rated the same by an expert as well. Hence, this implies that shared views are seen as a power or a craze that people crave. There are scores of examples of how herd mentality is used in various walks of life. For example, at military academies, the recruits are taught to be conformists and inclined towards herd mentality to strive for their cause. According to Tamara Avon, the program director of psychology at the South University in Savannah, people tend to lose their self-awareness when they are surrounded by a large crowd. They lose their individuality. It becomes easier for them to be vulnerable and be swept up in the general atmosphere and wave of emotion of the large crowd of which they are a part. The larger this crowd, the more their self-awareness is foregone. Causes of herd mentality. Even though herd mentality seems like such an irrational and nonsensical notion, and people would strongly claim that they would never indulge in such behavior, we are actually wired to act as conformists. Some triggers and reasons behind herd mentality are as follows. De-individuation. This is what was discussed in the aforementioned paragraph. In a large crowd, people lose control of their self-awareness. Emotions. In a group, it is easier for people to feel more vulnerable. The wave of emotion that overtakes the entire group is what affects the individual as well, which is why he or she acts like the surrounding people. Anonymity. Within a large group, there is a sense of security and anonymity. This implies that whatever you do, it will rarely be seen to be linked exclusively to you by others in the group. Hence, the person easily lets go of their sense of responsibility. Identity. It is very easy for people to lose their individual sense of identity when part of a large group of people. Delegation of responsibility. When people start acting unreasonably in a large group, it is not seen as irrational as it would have seemed if done individually. If a crowd begins to behave violently, it would not involve individual blame and it would seem like a situation of group responsibility. Fear. Research has shown that the brain section that is responsible for the emotion of fear is called the amygdala, and it is what causes the response of fear. This response center goes into overdrive and causes an adrenaline rush when fear kicks in. Similarly, the fear of uncertainty, anticipation, and standing out can cause the person to act in ways that they would never imagine were possible. Many researchers claim that herd mentality is a response to fear and unpredictability. Scientists have further discovered that the herd mentality that arises from fear is far more powerful, as compared to the herd mentality that stems from greed. Firstly, people most likely to become swept into herd mentality are adolescents who have had a troubled past and who already feel helpless and hopeless. Those with no sense of self-awareness and identity are the most vulnerable to give in to herd mentality. They are likely to do this simply because they feel like they finally belong somewhere and the group they spend time with cares about them. Secondly, young children who are disillusioned, impressionable and breakable in their beliefs are also likely to be victims of herd mentality. Thirdly, people who are in dire situations with regards to financial woes and health issues are also more likely to indulge in herd mentality in desperate times. Fourthly, children who already have weak ties or bonds with their family members and are generally antisocial are more likely to become victims of herd mentality. Ways to evade herd mentality. We all can relate to the concept of herd mentality, as we all have encountered a situation where we conformed to the public opinion. This kind of behavior is likened to animalistic behavior, for instance, how ants form a large crowd when there is a tasty morsel on the ground, how bees hover over their hive, and how birds flock at once when migrating. Hence, there are strong parallels between animal behavior and human group behavior. The phenomenon of herd mentality is a very useful tool that is used by stockbrokers, financial analysts, sales professionals and retailers. They use it to decipher consumer behavior and incline an individual to purchase certain goods or services, just because everyone else is doing it. There are ways to avoid herd mentality in a way that does you no harm and helps you maintain your sense of identity. Take time to consider a particular decision. This basically implies that you need to stop being on a constant autopilot where you are always on the go and do not have time to even consider your options, views and choices. Prior to taking a particular decision, such as when buying a product, conduct your own research and give less emphasis to the opinions of others. Once you make this a habit, you will become prone to making more conscious decisions. Make an effort to form your own individual opinions. Relegating to the opinion of others without even taking the time to consider your own can be very damaging. Educate yourself on making the rational and well-informed choice or decision on your own, and then stick to it. Don't sway your opinion to align with another individual's views. Creativity is key to enforcing your own self-identity. Being creative implies that you are not constantly running off to others for thoughts on how to do a certain task. You are imaginative enough to make your own logical decisions and trust your own opinions. Have reachable goals in life. Goals provide life with much-needed meaning, ambition and direction. If a person has realistic life goals, then it would take much more than a herd to alter their mindset. Instead of the herd directing you where to go mindlessly, it will be your goals, desires, needs and ideas. Say no when required. Never hesitate to say no when a situation demands it. This is particularly true when it comes to dealing with a crowd mentality in which everyone is telling you to do one thing that you do not want to do. Remember that it is okay to stand out and not do what everyone else is doing. Do not be afraid to refuse. Do not be skeptical of standing out. Numerous studies have shown that those who lack social acceptance are more likely to follow a herd and go along with whatever the crowd's purpose is. This advice is not only to avoid a herd mentality but also to become successful. Successful people do not hide behind crowds, they dare to be different and stick out of the crowd, which is what sets them apart from the masses. It is very important for a person's self-esteem, self-confidence and personal identity to not allow anyone else to make you feel bad about where you came from, or to let them dictate how you should feel, think and express. Take time to evaluate options. When you are in a hurry, you are more likely to get pressurized and let others decide for you. Do not let that happen. Give yourself the time and space to make reasonable and thoughtful decisions. Chapter 2, Emotion is the Compass. The human mind, a complex web. The human mind is a powerful organ. More often than not, we tend to ignore or deny the kind of grasping hold our mind has on our personality, the kind of lives we lead and the sort of situations we are in. Some individuals suffer from the constant case of negative thoughts, while others are undeniably positive. The case of pessimists, optimists and realists, it all suggests that there are different mental patterns and thoughts. Emotional intelligence. There is a need to achieve emotional intelligence, striking a balance between our rational mind and our impulsive mind. Our emotions, and our thoughts, are delicately interlinked and they both alter and affect the lives we lead. We often fail to understand just how strong is the force of our emotions and thoughts and how it completely alters our choices, actions and personalities. Our thoughts tinted with negativity single-handedly provoke us to do things that might be considered destructive and negative. On the flip side, positive thoughts motivate us to do things that are constructive, positive and progressive. Pessimism. The worst-case scenario is the constant case of negativity. Often our minds are too perfectly programmed to follow a set pattern of negative, constantly pessimistic thoughts. Individuals suffering from this are in constant state of agony, anxiety and self-destruction. Every situation is viewed from a very constricted, negative point and the result is always painful. Such individuals are known as pessimists, are known for their undying need to view everything from a negative point of view, to always find the downside in everything and to always focus on the negative aspect. In this case, the mind becomes your worst enemy. Many of us are slaves to our minds. Our own mind is our worst enemy. We try to focus, and our mind wanders off. We try to keep stress at bay, but anxiety keeps us awake at night. We try to be good to the people we love, but then we forget them and put ourselves first. Entrapped minds. Individuals who are constantly enslaved and entrapped by their negative thoughts are classified as pessimists. Pessimism, defined objectively, is a state of mind which basically involves the constant occurrence of recurring negative thoughts and feelings which convince an individual to always focus on the worst-case scenario and the shortcomings. Human beings often create a comfort zone in their minds and refuse to break the barriers. Sometimes we are too afraid to hope, to dare to believe that things might not be half as gloomy as we might perceive. More often than not, the blanket of pessimism is worn by humans as self-defense, to protect us from feeling the pain of disappointment, heartbreak and disillusionment. Therefore, we do not even try to go beyond the bounds of unflinching negativity. We do not even allow ourselves to look beyond the set ideas of pessimism in order to cushion us from the impending disappointment and pain. We often experience pessimism when we desire something. We constantly tell ourselves it will never happen, so we do not get crushed when our worst fears are confirmed. Hoping against all odds. We cannot deny, though, that in the hearts of our hearts, we know that we hope, against unbeatable odds, for something inexplicably great to happen to us, but we dare not let it show. We keep it concealed and trapped underneath layers and layers of negative abstraction, lack of enthusiasm and thinly veiled pessimism. We become so used to the way we think, it becomes difficult, often impossible, to crack down the fences of customary negative thinking patterns. Our minds begin to function along the lines of convoluted ideas of self-preservation which dictate that if we always expect the worst to happen, we will save ourselves from disappointment. Optimism. On the flip side, some people resolutely follow the ideas of sheer optimism, positivity and unwavering belief in all things progressive. Optimists are individuals who exhibit conscious selective focus on positivity. Optimism, quite like pessimism, is a state of mind which alters the viewpoints of different individuals on different matters. Despite worsening conditions and all factors pointing towards negativity, optimists find a way to hope against all odds. I suspect the truth is that we are waiting, all of us, against insurmountable odds, for something extraordinary to happen to us. Action and reaction. In a way, we are all exposed to similar experiences, the only difference is how we choose to react. Some gravitate towards pessimism, while others soar towards optimism. Psychologists suggest a midway, realism. Realists keep in mind both aspects of negativity and positivity and focus on the most real, most rational approach. Different researchers propose various benefits of following the realistic methodology, while others advocate the benefits of pessimism and optimism, respectively. Core life values. Aside from different psychological states of mind, all individuals possess core fundamental values that shape their life and personalities. These core values function as guidelines and guiding principles which color the course of human behavior and action. It is important to realize what core values are we following as individuals. These core values and guiding principles are ingrained in our minds and etched in our personalities while we are still impressionable and young. Circumstances and situations vary and individuals grow up with different core ethics about life. These essential ideals involve ideologies and moral principles regarding family, honesty, ethics about professional life, and personal relationships. Self-knowledge. Often, we follow different ethics, values and ideologies without really knowing that we are practicing them. While we are still young, certain values are relayed on to us through different life experiences and we carry them with us all our lives. Mostly, we lack the realization and, thus, it is extremely important to recognize ourselves and to understand fully where we stand morally. The process of formulating core life values does not stop when we grow old or when we are mature. In fact, it deepens and becomes more wholesome and has a lot more meaning and value than ever before. Therefore, it is extremely important to gain this vital self-knowledge. In order to do that, it is essential to know and to be aware of your values so you can conduct yourself more confidently in personal and professional life as an adult. The rarely visited field of self-discovery. If we set aside all the things that life throws at us, the everyday life situations that consume us, physically and mentally, if we, for a moment, set all of that aside and pause and really question ourselves, and if we really truly stumble upon the rarely visited field of self-discovery, how much do we really know about ourselves? It is a daunting question and is often met with mixed feelings of doubt, confusion and, more often than not, regressive ignorance. Questions about personality, core values and ethics are categorized as vague concepts of absurdity and abstraction. We often display such lack of interest because are we too afraid to realize that we are often living in conflict to our values. How, one might ask, does that occur? It does not have to be a groundbreaking foray from your core values. A simple example could be continuing day in and day out, a job that you have no interest in, thereby denying the reality and refusing to accept that you are living in conflict to your real values. It is a complex phenomenon, living a life forever impersonating someone else to impress the people we do not even care about for reasons that do not even matter. Emerging out of the shadows of obscurity. It is beyond the realms of common sense, living in a constant state of lie, to go on living as an imposter. We must not conform to the soul-crushing standards of life. It is important to create a space for yourself, to let yourself in and be who you are, without any inhibitions. We must not, under any circumstances, try to edit ourselves, or to keep ourselves in check to be a part of the mob. In this day and age, it is more comfortable to be the wallflower, to blend into the background and to never stand out. However, we must urge ourselves to look deeper into our hearts and to find the courage to be who we are and to let others know and fully see our true self. There is no gain in being a byproduct of lack of confidence and self-shaming. We are all given a single chance to live and we must make it worth our while. There is no use living a life which is based upon broken shambles of herd mentality, and conforming to mob rules. We must soar to the heights of being our true self, no matter how ridiculous, unique or diverse we may be. Getting to know your inner self. We make so many acquaintances, so many friends over the course of life, however, we often forget to get to know the real us. How many of us truly understand our true selves? These questions do not include mundane likes and dislikes, like your favorite color or your much-loved song or movie, or what are your preferred pizza toppings. These questions involve the fundamental, base values that our lives are based upon. It is very important to unfold into the person that we were always meant to be. So often people do not live up to their potential. We hear that so often. What does that really entail? We lack the realization and we lack the connection with our inner selves and, therefore, we never really achieve what we were supposed to. Knowing yourself or understanding yourself on deeper, base levels is what entails true form of self-discovery. So many times, we discard the ideas of self-discovery and self-exploratory journeys to fictional concepts and ideas. We must understand that asking ourselves what is important in our lives is not a matter of a fictional, abstract concept. It is a matter of coming face to face with your deepest, innermost insecurities and fears which we keep bottled up inside for far too long, pretending they do not even exist. All the while, we morph into someone else entirely and completely steer clear off the path to self-discovery because it might be a little painful to understand ourselves. Asking yourself what is important in life entails understanding your weakness, and your strengths. It is a question of your core values, beliefs and principles which your personality is based upon. It involves fundamental questions regarding your passions, your aims, dreams, your limitations, ideologies and opinions. If you attempt to answer these questions, you gain your purpose in life. Unfolding realities. All said and done, it is necessary to understand that our mental capacities affect our lives. If we put ourselves in certain situations, our personalities will unfold accordingly. It involves the simple concept of action and reaction. If we push too hard at something, it will either bend or there will come a point that it will break. Therefore, if we expose ourselves to situations that are too negative or too far destructive, our human minds and personalities will not bear the brunt for too long. We will either come out of the searing experience all too negative or completely broken. It can be further illustrated through the concept of that if we jump into water, what do we expect? We get wet. That is the most natural, most obvious outcome. Similarly, if we place ourselves in a healthy, positive environment, our mind will blossom and develop positively. We, as individuals, will be much happier. We reap what we sow and our minds soak up the negativity or positively form any given situation. It is all a fragile web, our thoughts, our emotions and our surroundings, they are all interlinked in the most complex of webs, and it is important to master our mind, in order to master our emotions and ultimately, our lives. Creating unique human realities. There is no set pattern to a perfect human being or a perfect set of core values. There is, as always, a certain level of objectivity, and everything must be taken in with a pinch of salt. Somewhere beyond the ideals of concrete rationality and subjectivity, there is a field of untainted emotions which are pure and unadulterated, and they form the most wholesome reflection of truly unique human realities. Chapter 3, We Are the Creator. Thought power and creating our reality. Many people are unaware of the fact that we are responsible for the realities that we create. It is often overlooked that our realities are always in our own control. What exactly is controlling our realities, you ask? Our thoughts, of course. Our thoughts have immense power and control over us, and we often overlook the fact. It is the way we think that influences our life and creates our realities. If we can always remember and get it etched in our mind that our thoughts are our controllers, we can greatly improve the quality of our life. The reason why the majority of us unconsciously create the same or negative realities is because we want proof. Our minds are programmed in a manner that demands proof, in order for it to come to a conclusion. We will not think a certain way unless our mind accepts logical proof for it. Whilst it is not the case with everyone, many people fall victim and unconsciously create their realities, and this process repeats repeatedly. However, the problem is that truth is a subjective term. It can vary according to various perspectives. Let's take a simple example. Water is poured in a glass until it covers half. Two people are looking at the same glass. Person A sees the glass as half full, whilst person B sees the glass as half empty. Both people have come to their separate conclusions in terms of how full or empty the glass is, but the way the people think reflects the kind of people that they are and how their thoughts control their realities. Person A and person B are both correct because the glass is half full, but it is also half empty. However, person A thought optimistically and hence saw the glass being half full. On the other hand, person B thought pessimistically and saw the glass being half empty. Both are right in their own way, but their thoughts greatly differ and reflect their personalities. Our thoughts have the power to make us or break us. The key to creating our reality is thought power. In order to create a rewarding destiny, one must have full control of their habitual thoughts and their nature. The nature of your thoughts attracts the kind of life that you live, and once you can monitor your thoughts, you can easily work your way towards living a better life. Many people are unaware of how powerful their thoughts actually are and end up becoming victims of depression, procrastination or wasting time. The thought power cannot only limit one's mental ability but physical ability too. A small thought can attract another thought that will in turn attract another one, and the cycle goes on. The result? A person's mind flooded with thoughts that may even be meaningless, and the person feeling helpless or in a state of mental distress. In order to stop thoughts from wasting your time, it is important to understand thought power. Here are a few aspects that can help you and should always be remembered. Always remember that outside effects are correspondent to inner causes. Circumstances do not make a man, they reveal him. The effects that we witness in our physical world reflect our inner thoughts and mentality. This is the ultimate essence of the power of our thoughts. One is responsible for the various conditions experienced in life since they are the result of one's collective beliefs and thoughts. Therefore, if you're down you can easily put up a show, but if you are truly not happy from inside, it will reflect in the way you act and talk to others. People can judge your thoughts by the way you act and talk. Majority of the people have the misconception that they are prone to thinking a certain way due to their circumstances. They don't even realize that it is their very thoughts that lead to the circumstances that they face. Whether those circumstances are good or bad, their thoughts are responsible for creating them. Creating your reality is an inside job that requires understanding. You can only create better realities and a better life for yourself, provided that you can change the way you think and take responsibilities for your thoughts. It isn't as easy as it seems, and it is even more difficult for a person who thinks negatively. However, with a little bit of knowledge, understanding and assistance, one can create a better life for themselves and can help others in polishing their thoughts. The herd mentality. Another important aspect that has the power to affect our reality is the herd mentality. The herd mentality is something that can destroy your mental strength without you even realizing it. Having a herd mentality refers to accepting a certain way of thinking just because the majority of the people think that way. People can be greatly influenced by the thoughts and beliefs of others and can unconsciously have them take over their ability to control their own thoughts. This is very damaging since one's mind is trained to accepting what the majority think and then it considers it as valid or a truth. This way, others actually become the controller of your thoughts and decisions, and hence, the outcomes are always limited or not exactly in your favor. An example of the herd mentality include being superstitious. A black cat will not necessarily imply that you will have bad luck, but because the majority associates black cats with superstition, your mind will naturally be prone into thinking negative. There is no limit to the power of your thoughts. The mind is very powerful, more powerful than you could imagine. It is responsible for every thought and every corresponding reaction. There is no limit to the amount of thoughts going through a person's head. Each person's thoughts will vary according to their nature and ability to perceive things in a certain way. A creative person will be able to create far more thoughts and mental scenarios as compared to a person who is not creative. Whilst this can be an advantage at times, it can also be a disadvantage. Let's take an example. When presented with a problem, a creative person will be able to think of multiple solutions. In this case, being creative and having a better thinking power is advantageous. On the other hand, the same creativity can cause the person to become a victim of meaningless thoughts that can prove to be a problem. These unnecessary thoughts can leave a person feeling very negative and hopeless about things. When a person can understand that they can be carried away by their thoughts, they can learn to control them and limit them to an amount that is healthy for their lives. The mind is very powerful, and once a person can comprehend that they have the power within them, it can help them towards creating better realities. All thoughts do not have the same power. According to the law of attraction, like energy attracts like energy. How does this affect our reality? It's actually quite simple. When we think positive and are happy, we attract positive energy and stay happy. On the other hand, when we think negatively, we subconsciously give off negative energy, attracting the negative energy around us. A person that is feeling positive and happy will be more likely to see the good in things, whereas, a person who is down will be prone to seeing the negative side of things. We attract what we feel. Our thoughts, beliefs and mental attitudes will formulate consequences according to their nature, and hence, understanding the law of attraction will help in attracting only good things for ourselves. All thoughts are alive. How? Well, everything around us is energy, and that energy has an effect on us. Even if those thoughts are meaningless fantasies, they are alive and have the power to affect us in one way or the other. Every time we think of something, it causes the emission of a certain frequency that in return, reflects to what we feel. Therefore, being aware of the fact that our thoughts are alive will help us in controlling them. When we know that each and every little thought will affect us, we will naturally try to focus on the quality of our thoughts. This is very important and can help a great deal in the way we think, and can help us in keeping realistic expectations. Our thoughts have different power depending upon the energy given to them. Our habitual thoughts are far more powerful and have a greater influence on us over thoughts that are not habitual. What we feel from day to day has far more power than we can imagine and can define us unknowingly. The more energy that you give to a certain thought, the more power that thought has over you. Therefore, if you become a victim of thoughts that end up controlling your life, it is your own fault, since you have given those thoughts too much energy and attention. If you want to keep thoughts from affecting your life, you must limit the amount of energy that you give to them. This can be effectively accomplished by keeping oneself busy. If you are a person who is prone to feeling miserable due to constant negative thoughts, simply focus your attention on other things. For example, when you feel that you are falling into a whirlpool of negativity, get up and do something that diverts your attention. You could read a book, cook something, or watch a movie. Whatever you do, the idea is to get your mind off those thoughts. Program your mind and change your life. The subconscious mind is responsible for creating our reality. If we truly wish to attract only good in our life, we must train our mind to do so. This can be thought of as a programming session. In order for us to be able to change our life for good, we must program, or rather reprogram, our mind that has been working on default. We must program our mind to think only of what we want it to think. This can be achieved through creative visualization. Creative visualization is a technique involved in creating realities. It involves the use of thought power to create the realities that we wish to witness. It is accomplished by creative imagination. The imagination powerfully transforms the thoughts into mental images. These images then correspond to what one feels in the physical world. In order to make the most of thought power, one must take control over their habitual thoughts and learn to transform them. However, it does not imply that each and every little thought is taken seriously and needs to be worked on. Otherwise, it will take away from the effectiveness of controlling one's thoughts. You must be aware of your thoughts but not obsessed about them. If you are going to be obsessed with each and every thought, you will only give them more power over you. Instead, focus on replacing those thoughts if they are not helping you grow. Replace every bad thought with a positive thought to cancel it out. If something is making you feel miserable, think of a good memory or something funny that can take away the power of the thought that was bringing you down. What you plant now, you harvest later. Focus on replacing your thoughts today and it will help you work your way towards a better future. You must learn to tame the thoughts that have the most power or control over you. The dominant thoughts are the ones that need to be worked on, since they affect your reality. Do not waste your time stressing over every thought. Monitor your feelings and analyze the thoughts that are responsible for creating those unwanted feelings. It is those thoughts that need your attention. Once you can effectively tame your dominant thoughts, you will naturally be able to improve the quality of your overall thoughts. Negative thinking and how to get it out. Negative thinking is horrible. It can do a lot more damage to you than you can imagine. Negative thoughts have too much power, and when those thoughts are given more energy, they can instantly have you falling into depression. Too many people are becoming victims of depression, and it is due to negativity that is given the power to control one's life. One must remember that life is not going to be all smooth. There will be ups and downs in everyone's life. To think negative or to experience times of distress is completely natural. However, what matters is the way we respond to that negativity. When we think negatively, we are giving off low vibrations. These negative vibrations or energy attracts other similar vibrations. In return, a person ends up feeling more negative. What we put out, that is negative energy, we get it back, and hence, unconsciously become victims of creating realities that are doing us no good. If we don't get hold of these negative thoughts and control them, we turn those thoughts into habitual thoughts. These habitual thoughts gradually become dominant ones and turn into vicious negative cycles that repeat time after time. Even if we are not generally negative thinkers, we can easily fall into the trap when we decide to give power to our negative thoughts. Just a single negative thought can lead to a network of negativity and have one feeling depressed. In order to let go of negative thoughts, we have to first acknowledge that they exist. Acknowledging that they exist is a better step than working to instantly replace those thoughts. People that are depressed or feeling down due to negativity cannot just let go of negative thoughts and replace them with positive ones straight away. It isn't that easy. Rather, one can acknowledge those thoughts and then think about gradually letting them go. This process is more practical and easier for one to manage. Let's take a closer look at how negative thoughts can be controlled and managed effectively. The importance of staying calm. Whenever we experience negative thoughts, we are often unaware of their impact. Those negative thoughts build up without us knowing, and we later realize that we wasted the last 30 minutes on useless worrying. When we can become aware of our negative thoughts, we can work on controlling them the instant that they arrive. Negative thoughts can have us instantly responding to them. Those responses that are a consequence of negativity only add more negativity. These negative thoughts can cause you to react and feel regretful for reacting in a certain way. Therefore, it is very important to stay calm before reacting straight away. If you cannot let go of negative thoughts altogether, consider changing the way you respond to them. Assess the thought. There are countless thoughts that a person experiences, but are exactly all of them valid or even true? Many a times, people end up giving power to thoughts that may not even be true or may be useless negative scenarios that a person has unconsciously created in the mind. These thoughts have negative consequences, and when one learns that the thought was not that much of a concern, the feeling of regret makes one feel pathetic. Therefore, assess the thoughts and limit the contemplation period. Do your thoughts even deserve the amount of attention and time that you are giving them? The answer is usually no. Instead of having the negative thoughts building up and turning into a grand scenario of negativity, focus your attention on thinking positively about those thoughts. For every negative thought or feeling, tell yourself that it may be for your betterment. You can even think of it as a lesson learned and then focus on moving on. The idea is to change the way you respond to a negative thought by training your mind to think positively. When you think positively, you ultimately take away the power of your negative thoughts. Why wait for the first negative thought to attract more negativity and cause you distress? Catch the first thought and control it before it spreads. If you can catch the very start of the negativity, you can control it before it grows into a bigger issue. Therefore, kill the first negative thought by diverting your attention elsewhere. It can help a great deal. Do not blame yourself. As mentioned before, it is completely natural to become a victim of negative thoughts. However, the worst you can do is blame yourself by entering a mode of self-sympathy. Remind yourself that everybody thinks negatively at some point in their life, but you will not let that negativity get in your way. As long as you can understand that feeling negative is human but you can master your mental ability by accepting and moving on, you can easily start to live a happier and healthier life. In a nutshell, the thought process has a major impact on reality creation. As long as an individual can understand the power of the thoughts, they can work their way towards creating better realities for themselves. Always remember that your life will reflect the way you feel. Therefore, if you want to live a happier life, you can only achieve that if you are internally happy. Once you master controlling your thoughts, feeling and emotions, you can change your life in miraculous ways. As the famous quote states, "Change your thoughts and you change your reality." Try it today and you will instantly feel the positive effect that it has on you, not just mentally but physically too. Conclusion. Do what makes you happy. All that matters in the end is doing what makes you happy. This is a proven fact. You need to completely disregard what others think about what you do or how it will affect the amount of money you make. If it makes you happy, you need to be doing more of it. Whether it's a job, a certain activity, a passion, or even if it means being silly and having some fun, if it's lifting your spirits, it deserves more of your time. It can be easy to neglect the importance of happiness in this fast-paced world, but you need to change your priorities. You must follow your emotion and do what makes you happy. Your happiness should always be your first priority. Even if you get a well-paying job, what use is that job if it is providing for you but taking the happiness away from your life? Wouldn't you prefer a job that pays you less but gives you time and allows you to be happy? Whether it means getting to spend more time with loved ones or simply being able to enjoy the job responsibilities, being happy about something is always going to be more rewarding. The rewards will not be just for that time but also for the long run. Doing what brings you happiness will change your life in a way that you never imagined. Many people restrict their happiness because they feel that they are not allowed to feel that way or that it's not worth it because it may not bring monetary benefits. Others may not follow their emotions and passions because they feel that they cannot make a living out of it or simply do not have the time. What's worse is when people are aware of something that makes them happy but choose to distance themselves from it because they feel that their money-making lives are more important. Well, to make money and earn a good living is important, but what about your happiness? Are you sure you are going to live long enough to reap the rewards of your hard work? Are you sure that you are going to have that job for forever and not be kicked out randomly one fine day? What guarantee does your life give you that you will have time for happiness later on if you sacrifice it today? This does not imply that a person starts wasting their time on useless activities because they are told to be happy and having a job means that their happiness will be put at stake. Rather, it reflects the importance of understanding that everything must be balanced in life. You cannot be working hard all the time and not enjoy yourself. You cannot just have a job because it pays you well but is causing you to be depressed because it's too much of a burden. You cannot just distance yourself from happiness because of the mere thought of what other people will think. You only live once and you deserve to live a life that pleases you and keeps you happy. Therefore, learn to balance that life by changing your priorities. When you learn to follow your emotions and do what makes you happy, you create rewarding realities. It is always better to consciously create your realities instead of waiting to see what happens. When you are aware that your mind is the ultimate power source that controls the way you feel, think and react, you naturally start to become more conscious. So why not consciously create and create for good? All it requires is some practice, but it is not impossible to achieve. Regardless if it takes you a week or a month to get you started with consciously creating realities, it will always be beneficial for you and your loved ones. Not only will you see an improvement in your mood, your happiness will reflect in everything you do. If you're depressed, you will be plagued by negativity and your entire day will be ruined. This causes you to lag behind and miss deadlines. This not only ruins your day, but it also has an adverse effect on your mental and physical health. Your mood and your perspective define the type of day you have. If you maintain a positive attitude, then no matter what goes wrong in your day, you achieve the strength to overcome those obstacles. However, if you adopt a negative attitude, you find yourself unable to tackle even the simplest of problems. Your attitude towards something defines how good you are at it, so don't let your negativity dictate your life. In fact, be positive and everything will fall right into place. If you are happy and you cook, the results will be better because you would have enjoyed what you cooked and would have done it with love. If you are happy and you hear a joke, it can surprisingly seem funnier. Similarly, everything around you will make you happy because your mind will subconsciously be giving off positive vibes. Happiness is so powerful that it can make you see the sunshine even when it's dark and gloomy outside. That internal feel-good factor is so powerful that it can create realities that you have always wanted and can improve the quality of your life. In order to consciously create realities, you must take time to sit down and analyze your thoughts. Ask yourself why something is a certain way and whether it's the result of your thought power. Imagine your life by picturing what your life would look like if your thoughts were different and happier. How would it affect you and the things you do, and how would they help you in the long run? When you can visualize your life in a better state than it currently is, you will begin to realize that your future and your realities are in your own hand. Start by thinking of the job that you have. Are you happy with it? If yes, great. If you're not, think of why you are not happy. Is it because you are not being paid well? Is it because it is taking too much of your time? Is it because it is miserable due to the staff at work, or is it because you simply just don't like your job? Ask yourself why you are still doing something that is not keeping you happy and understand that you deserve better. Not only do you deserve better, better yet, you can create better realities. How? Simple. Change your job, follow your emotions, and do what makes you happy. Earn a living through your passion and witness it transform your life in miraculous ways. You'll instantly start to notice that your priorities will not be money because the rewards that you'll get from your happiness will feel so precious. Why wait for the stage of regret when so many years have passed and you've earned well but have missed out on the fun? Imagine living a life when you can finally rest and want to enjoy yourself but you don't have the energy. Isn't it scary? Is that what you deserve? No. Anybody can consciously create realities and live a better life. Regardless of your age, profession or goals in life, you have the power to transform and enhance your life through the creation of realities. Nothing just happens because it's meant to be. You have the power within you to create the realities, and that power has always been there. Now is the time that you need to make use of that power and allow it to transform your life for good. Get hold of your thoughts by learning to control them and minimizing their negative impacts. Know when it is time to let go or indulge in activities that are mentally helping you to grow. Get out of your bubble and take better risks, risks that allow you to do what makes you happy. Change your thoughts and let them change your reality. Now is the time to stop worrying about what people will think and focusing on the things that will make you happy. Remember, you can shape your realities the way you want. You can choose to entertain negative thoughts and have them leaving you depressed, or you can choose to be happy by doing what you love and thinking positively, and therefore, living a life that you enjoy and appreciate. You'll just be better at anything and everything that you do. Let's look at simple ways that can help you do what you love and shape better realities. When something does not make you happy, change it. If something is not making you happy, change it. Of course, it's easier said than done, but you have to understand that the power is always within you. If it's a job, consider changing your job. If it's a friend who's continuously bringing you down, consider having another friend who can make you feel better. Regardless of what it is that is bringing you down, changing it will help you get out of the negativity. Focus on what makes you happy, and like Nike always say, just do it. Ignore it, Another great way to do what makes you happy is to ignore your negative thoughts. You can be in the mood to do something, but the thought of what others will think or other negative thoughts can have you changing your mind and putting your happiness at stake. Don't fall into the trap that can easily take your happiness away from you. Whether it's other people or other priorities, ask yourself if they actually deserve the status that you have subconsciously given them. Simply ignore the negativity and continue doing what makes you happy. As long as you're happy and are not doing anything wrong, why even entertain the negativity? Replace it. This one's simple. When a certain thought is keeping your happiness far away from you, replace that thought. It's easy. The moment you can become aware that a certain thought is doing you no good, you must focus on replacing that though with a better one. If you love chocolate, get hold of a bar. If you love to read, go grab that book. Any thought that is better, even if it's a good memory. It will do the trick. The idea is to get your mind off the thought that was not letting you be happy. Learn from it. It's normal for us to make mistakes and ruin our own happiness. Instead of sulking over why and how things went wrong, consider it a lesson and progress forward. Life is too short to sit down and allow your thoughts to constrain your freedom to be happy. Simply allow the experience to help you in growing mentally and move forward in the direction of your happiness. See it with different lens. You can also do what makes you happy by changing the way you look at something that isn't making you happy. Sounds confusing, but the essence is simple. Simply change your perspective about whatever is keeping your happiness away from you. If you're working in a call center and handling a multitude of customer calls every day, think about how many people you are helping. All those calls. Think of how many lives you are making easier, even if it means helping them solve a basic technical problem. When you can learn to see things differently, you can do what makes you happy. So whether it's a job, a decision or aspect of life, if it isn't making you happy, you are not growing. When you're not growing mentally, you are unconsciously creating realities in default mode. Get out of the herd mentality and get it etched in your mind that you are responsible for the realities that you create and you have the power to change them. Creating realities is no rocket science. Anybody can create realities that are more rewarding, and they can effectively accomplish it at any stage of their life. All it requires is some awareness, dedication, and you're good to go. Start creating better realities today and live a rewarding life, a life that you deserve. Thank you for reading The Secret of Creating Your Reality. If you enjoyed this book, please consider leaving a review at Amazon. Even if it's only a few lines, it would make all the difference and would be very much appreciated. Grace Scott.